Hey, thanks for making it to Veterans Info Tap. I'm glad you made it. Wanted to talk about the potential of an increase in payment. Now, before we jump into this, I want to throw on a special thank you to Roy Schofield. Roy, thank you so much for the super comment, super chat. I really, really do appreciate your support very much, Roy. All right, so jumping into this, there is some push for an increase in payment, and how this trickles down, it will be interesting to see. Now, I found this specifically on bestcolleges.com. Proposal would increase housing allowance for online GI Bill recipients. If passed, the bill would provide equal housing allowances to in-person and online college students accessing the GI Bill. So for those that don't know, what happens is if you utilize your GI Bill and you go in person to a location, you get the housing allowance based on, the geographic area. It's different everywhere. Now, if you do it only solely online, you get some sort of a reduced benefit, which isn't very good compared to in a lot of cases. So this is a move in the right direction, in my opinion, especially if you're considering veterans who are trying to go to school, balance everything. Oftentimes, online is the best way to go. After hours, you might have family, children, all that stuff. So there's 4 bullet points here. Again, I found this on bestcolleges.com. And this just came out July 2nd, 2025 on their publication. So these 4 bullet points: currently GI Bill beneficiaries enrolled in fully online programs receive a smaller housing stipend, which is true. Many advocates have long campaigned for an increase in this allowance to cover non-educational expenses. Newly introduced bill would effectively double the housing allowance for online students. Some worry the expansion will push students into predatory online programs. So I guess all of that is true. Now, the question is, the first thing that pops into my mind on that last one, some worry the extension will push students into predatory online programs. Then the VA should not allow for the GI Bill to be utilized at so-called predatory online programs. If you've identified it as a predatory online program, then don't allow the GI Bill to be utilized there. Seems simple. All right. Fully online student veterans may soon get a significant increase to their monthly housing allowance. A bipartisan group of lawmakers led by Republican U.S. Representative Juan Cisamani of Arizona reintroduced the Expanding Access for Online Veteran Students Act. If you support it, you should reach out to your congressional members and let them know that you do support it. And again, like any good piece of legislation out there, if it doesn't specifically apply to you, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't support it. A win for veterans is a win for veterans, period. And that's a good thing. The more that we have good things happening, I think the better off we are. So Expanding Access for Online Veteran Students Act is the name. They did that last month. If passed, they reintroduced it last month. If passed, online students would qualify for a monthly housing allowance equal to the national average for all in-person GI Bill beneficiaries. Interesting. So the way that the bill works is, instead of having these geographic pockets for GI Bill based on your attendance and all that good stuff for in-person, they are going to take the national average and then call that the online version, which will still be much higher. So that's still great news. Moving on. Currently, online only GI Bill recipients qualify for half the national average each month. How is the monthly housing allowance calculated? In-person or hybrid students receive monthly housing allowance based on their location of their training. The Defense Travel Management Office calculates the allowance based on the school's zip code, the number of credits a student is enrolled in, and the length of time the student served in the military. Online students, meanwhile, don't get a location adjustment allowance. Distance learners get a monthly housing allowance equal to half the national allowance average. For students who started using their benefits in 2018 or after, this equals $1,118.50 per month. The proposal faces some opposition. Veterans Education Success, VES, opposed the Expanding Access for Online Veteran Students Act, arguing it would offer incentives for predatory online colleges to target veterans for their GI Bill funds. Interesting. Veterans Education Success opposed the Expanding Access for Online Veteran Student Act, arguing it would offer incentives for predatory online colleges to target veterans for their GI Bill funds. Again, I think that barring veterans from this is not the solution to that proposed issue or perceived issue. I think that really the fix is, if you find a predatory institution, then don't allow GI Bill funds to be utilized for them, right? If whatever, Janie's tax service and massage therapy school is deemed predatory, then don't allow GI Bill funds to be utilized there. I don't know. Anyway, moving on. Bad actor, here's a quotation, bad actor, low quality schools would immediately jump on the legislation's increased housing allowances as a primary selling point, VES said in a statement, and target veterans with aggressive recruiting to pull the veterans out of reputable colleges that would better serve their educational or career objectives. So, okay, but what if a veteran wants to use one of those reputable colleges, right, and go online only? Oh, they're just they have to suffer because that's just the way that it should be. That seems just dumb. All right. Other advocacy groups and analysts praise the proposal, and I'm more on the praise side. I think it's great. You should absolutely do it. And at the same token, if you find a predatory school, you should probably not just allow VA to be utilized there. No GI Bill funding, right? You're not allowed to use it at that school. So again, Lindsay, here's I'm not sure who this is. Lindsay Tepp, I'm thinking, Director of Government Relations at American Council on Education, ACE, told Best Colleges that increasing the housing allowance for online learners creates equity for non-traditional students. Adult learners are more likely to pursue an online education to balance other responsibilities. True, I totally agree. And a larger housing allowance can help them cover the costs without going into debt. A quotation here, I do see some momentum here, she said. I think it's about ensuring there is attention to detail. Background of the GI Bill housing allowance. To understand the different housing allowances, it's important to understand why there is a difference to begin with. When the post 9/11 GI Bill originally passed in 2008, there was no housing allowance for online learners. Scott Breeze, officer at Pew Student Loan Initiative, told Best Colleges that it wasn't until 2010 that Congress added a housing stipend for online students, but at a lower rate than for in-person students. Both Breeze and Tepp agreed this was a feature, not a bug. At the time, there was still a negative perception attached to online-only colleges and universities. A larger housing stipend for in-person learning incentivized student veterans to enroll in in-person classes rather than pursue an online degree. Many student veterans have responded by taking on student loan debt, Pew found. So that's just all true. So I mean, look, here's the thing. It makes sense to allow options. It doesn't make sense to allow VA GI Bill to be utilized at a fraudulent school, right? I mean, so figure that piece out. So a 2022 Pew report co-authored by Breeze found that of the 27% of undergraduate GI Bill beneficiaries who took out loans, nearly 3 in 5, 58%, did so primarily to cover living expenses. While this included costs like groceries and transportation, housing was the living expense most often cited as the reason for taking out a student loan. Moreover, even in-person students who get the full stipend can't always afford housing costs, Breeze said. This situation is bad for student veterans who get the full deal, he said. And if you're an online veteran, it's that much worse for them. VES said in its statement that the practical considerations that created the housing allowance rules over a decade ago are still relevant. This housing allowance differential is designed to account for the lower housing costs and greater employment flexibility inherent to distant education, VES states. Where students typically maintain existing housing arrangements and continue working while studying and do not incur the costs that in-person students incur by relocating housing and reducing work hours to attend classes in person. I don't like VES. There's a lot of blanket statements in what they're saying, talking about that people who go in person relocate housing. That's not necessarily true. In fact, the majority probably pick a college that's near them. I would probably venture to say that the lion's share are doing that, right? They've already moved and now they're going to college. So I don't know, whatever. I'd love to get your thoughts on that. So there is this push, right, for larger housing allowance. TEP of ACE explained that lawmakers have pushed for an increase for the housing allowance in the past. Sisamani introduced a version of the Expanding Access for Online Veteran Students Act in September of 2023. While that version never gained traction, she said it differed from the current proposal because it would have only increased the monthly housing allowance for online students during the summer semester, which I remember and I actually covered on this channel. So this is a much better version. The conversation is moving in the right direction. And again, my suggestion is if you're still hanging on there because you have a child, because they're going to be utilizing the post 9/11 GI Bill. I mean, like I have my son who's currently in the Air Force. He may be using that. I think this is great for him. I am personally not. You might be personally looking at utilizing your post 9/11. And if that's the case, you should absolutely be reaching out to your congressional member and letting them know that this is a great move and that they need to support it. Moving on, obviously, it's ultimately an affordability issue, right? With housing costs and availability strained, student veterans of all modalities need financial assistance to help cover this necessity. Breeze of Pew added that online learning is often the best option for students. Many student veterans juggle other responsibilities like work and childcare, and attending online courses help them balance that more easily. Additionally, he said, many veterans may return from duty to rural areas without many nearby college options, leaving online learning the only viable solution. And I agree. So with that, reach out to your congressional member, let them know that you support. And thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you very much. Have a great one. And remember, if we don't take care of each other, something went wrong.